This is DTNS Live for Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025. From Studio Animal House, I'm Sarah Lane.
In Los Angeles, California, I'm Tom Merritt.
In Salt Lake City, I'm Scott Johnson.
And I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
Daily Tech News Show Live is made possible by you listening right now. Big thanks to all of you out there, including Brad, Kevin Morgan, Paul Thiessen, and new patron Monica.
Yay!
Welcome, Monica. Thank you.
Indeed. And welcome to all of you to DTNS Live. This is the show where we discuss the tech news to help us all understand everything that we're reading and seeing and talking about a little bit better. How's everybody doing? Scott Johnson, how are you?
I'm doing all right. It's cold, though. It was 7 degrees last night.
Ooh,
so
that's cold.
Take that. I think I sent a text to Tom even how cold it was. And
I'll send you some 80 degrees. You know, we've got Fahrenheit to spare here.
Yeah. When I did it, it was 26. We're going to have a high of 34 today, so we'll be fine. Everything will be okay.
If we knocked 10 degrees off down to 70, I wouldn't even notice, and that would bring you up into the 40s.
Yeah,
yeah
I assume that's how it works. We're just swapping these 10 degrees.
My Apple Watch says 77. I don't need that.
No, you don't. I could use
Sarah
it.
can pitch in too.
Throw you at
now
least
we got
15.
you into the 50s. Yeah.
At least you'd think I could have like a bunch of snow to play in, but it's all in the mountains, so it's just really cold in the valley. No snow down here. It's kind of like barren
and you could
awful,
get in the car and go play in the snow, but it's too cold to go outside.
That's right. So what am I going to do? I'm going to sit here and do Daily Tech News Show with some of my favorite people.
We'll warm your heart.
We will. We'll warm your heart.
I look forward to it.
Yeah. Hopefully you don't need Tums when we're done with the show. But if you do, it's fine. Tum. All right. Without further ado, let's check out some news.
You better bet Google had announcements at BET in London. Sorry about that. Google unveiled updates for Google Education Workspace and Chromebooks to improve classroom experiences. Among the highlights are new class tools for remote content sharing and live translations. So if someone in the class speaks a different language, they can get subtitles and live translations that will go along to helping them understand better. The Notebook LM product can now create study guides and quizzes. Professors and teachers can prepare all their lecture notes and stuff in there. Google Videos for AI-assisted video creation. Chromebook Plus brings advanced features like generative image creation and live translate for educators and students. More than 20 new Chromebook devices are set to launch in 2025.
Transit app MoveIt, that's MOOVIT, has teamed up with Distribution Technologies to let users plan and book long-distance train, bus, and ferry trips across 40 European countries within the MoveIt app. So as a traveler, you can access schedules, directions, real-time updates, all in one place. This is MoveIt's first foray into mobile ticketing for long-distance travel as well, partnering with carriers like Deutsche Bahn and Trenitalia. It's live on Android and iOS and the web, but currently limited to Europe.
Yeah, but if you're going across multiple countries in Europe...
Oh, man, I want this big time.
Don't need multiple apps. Well, as long as you're using the train companies that are participating, but it sounds like they got a bunch. OpenAI announced a partnership with SoftBank and Oracle to launch Stargate Project. It is a joint corporation to operate multiple data centers across the United States. First one's coming to Texas. They've invested a lot of money, $100 billion. They're going to spend even more money, $500 billion, but roll out data centers in states all over the country over the next 4 years.
CNBC sources say that Google is ramping up its investment in Anthropic, which is known for its Claude family of LLMs. Google has already committed $2 billion and is adding another $1 billion and holds a 10% ownership stake in the startup.
And the Department of Homeland Security terminated all advisory committees, and that included the Cybersecurity Review Board, the CSRB, which, among other things, is investigating the Salt Typhoon intrusions into U.S. telcos. All advisors are encouraged to reapply, but they were told that committee activities will be focused solely on advancing our critical mission to protect the homeland and support DHS's strategic priorities. I would assume the Cybersecurity Review Board would count as critical, but I guess we'll find out.
All right, Samsung held its Galaxy Unpacked earlier today, Wednesday. Tom, some folks seem to consider it kind of lackluster, but we still got a lot of news.
We did. A lot of it was very typical of what you get in a Samsung announcement, but not a lot of extras. They announced the new S25s. So you got the S25 base model, the S25 Plus, and the S25 Ultra. They announced new features for Gemini that will appear on the Galaxy S25 first, but they're coming to all Android devices. So those aren't even Samsung specific. And there were some announcements related to One UI, which is the kind of overlay that Samsung uses over stock Android. But again, stock Android is there, so it's not like they have their own operating system. I'll get into a few of the details, but what we didn't hear was a Ring 2. We heard very little about Project Muhan, which is their extended reality headset. They just said, we can't wait to share more details later this year. So lackluster in the sense of it really was just announcing the phones and features around the phones. Among those features are Gemini is now the default button on the side of the S25. So when you press that button, you're going to get Gemini. Bixby is still there. I know some of you are like, wait, I'm so worried about Bixby. Is it dead? No. Bixby is still there, but the way Samsung is positioning it is Bixby is good for device settings, doing things that are related to the operation of the phone, and Gemini is for internet-facing things, web-facing things, stuff like that. But the nuts and bolts are S25 is smaller bezels, bigger screens. 6.2-inch S25 is $800. 6.7-inch S25 Plus is $1,000. The 6.9-inch S25 Ultra is $1,300. They're all available for pre-order today. Officially go on sale February 7th. Slightly rounded edges now on all the models, a little flattened for an easier grip. Also significant, no Exynos processor models. In the past, you'd have Qualcomm models in the US and maybe some Exynos models internationally. Everybody's getting the Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy, made on 3-nanometer process, and that is tuned for the Galaxy. So they worked with Qualcomm to make it custom for the Galaxy. They're claiming a 37% CPU performance upgrade, 30% graphics boost, and 40% improved neural processing unit over the S24. Also, some other features here. 12 gigabytes of RAM is now basic. That's standard. That's what you get at the entry level. So you go up from there. That's nice. They are Qi 2 ready, which might be a little confusing if you're like, wait, what does that mean? It means they can charge on a Qi 2 device, but they can't be called Qi 2 because they don't have the magnets. So Qi 2 is using the Apple MagSafe thing where it's supposed to click on with the magnets. The S25 doesn't have the magnets. So it's got the protocol, it can use it. It's just can't quite call itself fully Qi 2, but it's Qi 2 ready. There's a bunch of camera stuff, some fun video playback tweaks in here. Another notable thing is the S Pen lost Bluetooth, so it will not be able to do the gesture control or the remote control, but they still have the S Pen on the Ultra. Gorilla Armor 2 glass coming to the Ultra. Ultra wide camera on the Ultra goes from 12 megapixels to 50 megapixels, and video playback on the Ultra is 31 hours. So good battery life claimed on the Ultra. They also have some fun AI assists like drawing assist to generate new images, similar to Image Playground. Now Brief is a proactive app that will know things about you from on device and then give you news and weather and sports scores. And that'll work with the Now bar, which is kind of like Apple's Dynamic Island, to show you sports scores, directions, and other notifications on the edge of the screen. There's a personal data engine that will be powering things like Now Brief that takes info from the applications. And again, a lot of on-device stuff keeping track of you. But like I said, that's it. It was phones and nothing else. In fact, Roger and I were talking about this before the show. They ended the show, they rolled the credits, and then they put up, but there's one more thing. They didn't say one more thing, but like, you thought it was over, but it's not. And then they played a video that said S25 Edge. And of course, everybody's like, oh, this is the slim. This is the thin one. Great. And they played this video of all the pieces coming back together. And then that was it. There was no like coming soon. There was no launching in March. There was no someone came back out to give you details. Everyone thought their stream had hung because we were like, is it over or was there a technical error? But that was it. That was the end of the announcement.
I mean, Mark Gurman
really
over at
bizarre.
Bloomberg says it's supposedly, according to a source, coming middle of this year, priced under $1,300. But even then, that's not something that Samsung said itself.
Yeah, and there'd been a lot of leaks around the Slim, which is what people were calling it before today anyway. So it's like, okay, so we're still waiting for Samsung official announcement about anything but the name. I guess we know the name now.
Yeah, it's a weird way to end things, though, isn't it? Just feels a little disjointed. Usually,
well,
you would
me
do
and
it
Jen
before.
Cutter and Amos were sitting around waiting for this thing to end so we could publish Daily Tech News Show briefing this morning. And we were all looking at each other like, is it hung? Is it still playing? Are we done? It was it was really odd.
Yeah, it's a very weird way of doing it. But I mean, as much as it's easy to look at this and say lackluster announcements, just kind of stuff people either expected or another iterative announcement from Samsung, seems like decent upgrades across the board. Stuff's all right. I really love go ahead.
If you've got a couple-year-old Galaxy, you might want to jump in on this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think if you have the S24 though, Roger, what do you think? I don't think you need to upgrade to this one.
It's if you want a new flagship phone, these are definitely very much standard flagship phones, but it's not compelling enough for me to having just spent, $1,500 on the current, like the last generation, to move up to it. I mean, really, it's funny. The more of the events seem focused on how much of their AI they've tried to integrate into the phones, which
that's what everybody's doing these days, right? Apple
Yeah.
does the same thing. Google's been doing the same thing. So that's where everybody's trying to differentiate themselves. I'm not sure it's working.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. You just mentioned it at the top. Is that it's not exclusive to Samsung. So if you just wait a bit and you have an Android phone, most of that's going to be coming to your handset. So I don't know. It was just like, here's our phone. I don't know. It seemed it just seemed like something was missing out of it. Like there was something else that was supposed to be in it. But
I think because we're used to these big hour-long announcements, it was more than an hour long, giving us multiple things or giving us big advancements, that they took all of this time just to give us the phone specs.
Yeah.
And like Scott's saying, these aren't bad upgrades. These are decent upgrades. These are nice upgrades. And if I have a S22, I'm probably like, oh yeah, no, this would be great. I should probably jump in on this. But why did you need to take more than 60 minutes to tell us about it?
You could have done this in 45 minutes and still had time to spare.
Well, but that's, the company's going to make it 60 and make it sound really cool. I feel I always use the comparison to cars just because I feel like phones sure, we've got some outliers, but they have all started to look and for the most part act the same. You just decide what manufacturer you want to go
Right.
with.
Right.
You decide what OS you like the best. And, year after year, it's sort of like, yeah, we bumped up the camera. There's some new AI features. Outer body didn't change because it was already working for people type thing. Every so often, you're going to get a new, like, whoa, let's reinvent the wheel type thing. And that's where people
Right.
get excited. And that's why announcements like these tend to make people be like, oh, all right, well, okay. I guess we
it's
got
just
some more
a sedan
megapixels in
and
the
an
camera.
SUV. Like you're not really tearing it up here.
Yeah,
so,
like maybe it's like slightly curved more than before, but for the most part, it looks like the car on the road next to me.
More of the Muhan project would have been nice, and I know Tom's made
barely
mention of that.
anything
but
about it. Yeah, they actually published an interview with TM, the head of Samsung's mobile device, on Bloomberg during the Unpacked announcement that said more about it than what they said in their actual announcement.
Yeah, I mean, they're clearly waiting for I don't know what to show more off, but that was easily the thing I was most interested in this one, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who are just anxious to see what this device does to differentiate itself in a increasingly more crowded AR VR market. And I really wanted to see that, but I guess we're gonna have to wait a little longer. I still think this is the year though you're gonna see it, and they make a big deal out of it.
Breakout.
I wonder how much of this, and I speculated about this with Jen on the briefing a little bit too, but how much of this has to do with Samsung's internal disruptions? Because we've covered over the past year or so that they've had labor disputes. They've sent down messages from the executives saying, we're in trouble and we all need to work weekends and worked hard to get back on track. Maybe this is a symptom of that. It's like, oh yeah, you're behind on the Ring. You're behind on a Project Muhan. Like you are not actually keeping to your schedule anymore, which Samsung famously does usually.
Did the Ring do okay for them as far as we know, like sales?
As far as we know, yeah.
Okay.
And everyone is saying there's a Ring 2. You're getting all those leaks from respectable sources saying that's developed. They just didn't have it today. They didn't have it ready.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
It is earlier in the year too, so I guess the more charitable view would be, well, Samsung wanted to introduce the S25 earlier in the year so they can get the jump and get the sales, but the Ring and all of that can come in February closer to Mobile World Congress, which is when we used to get the Galaxy S phones.
Oh, that's true. I didn't
That's
think about
true.
that.
Yeah, you could think of it as Samsung being like, well, maybe you thought today was lackluster. Wait a month. We've got other stuff going on.
It could just be,
and maybe they also weren't ready for that other stuff.
Yeah, it could be. But Tom, that's a really good point. Like Mobile World Congress is absolutely a place where we expect to see such things, although the phone updates too. but yeah, like I suspect it'll be sooner than later if they want to. I'm honestly not sure what that device is going to do to differentiate itself to the point that there is a bigger market for their AR solution. I don't know what that means yet, so I need them to kind of show us so I know what that means. Like if they're going to have it out for this holiday season, is it even a thing for us? Is this more of a non-consumer device? Is it aimed at professionals? Like I don't know a thing about it other than they're excited and that they've mentioned it and it has a project name, and that's all we know. I want to know more.
And I think Meta's really leading in this area by slowly adding usable functions, right? It's the Meta Ray-Bans are limited in what they can do, but they're really good at the things they do. They take good videos. The AI assistant is limited, but it can answer the things that you ask it. They just had the news today that they're going to work with Oakley. So now they're like widening the designs. If you're like, Ray-Bans are fine, but not my thing. Well, now you've got another choice. I don't know. Should Samsung partner with Gentle Monster or somebody for design and start to position themselves that way? I mean, that seems like be a better deal than to come up with something which these mock-ups in the announcement made it look more like goggles, more like the Apple Vision Pro style end of things than the Ray-Ban style.
More like a headset or whatever.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing I'll give Meta a bunch of credit for in this particular side of their market is that they're not in ready aim mode. They're just kind of firing. They're like, here are these glasses. Here is this headset. Here is a less expensive one. Here's a more expensive one. Like they're not doing a lot of, well, what we're working on, you're going to be blown away. They're actually producing product and it's in people's hands.
Yeah, they're just like tongue.
Yeah, and that gives them I think an advantage, whether it affects the plans for whatever Samsung's working on or anyone else for that matter. It's the one thing that set them apart from Apple, from everybody else trying to do stuff with headsets, is they are just like, wham, here it is. Check it out. I'm wearing it now. It's ready to go, and it's affordable, blah, blah, blah. Like I think that's key and important.
Yeah. And Sarah, you're right. Like we don't get crazy things with phones unless it's a new form factor. So there's nothing particularly disappointing about this, except that it's just phones.
Yeah. Well, and if you're in the market for one, nice phones.
Yeah, nice phones. Good chipset, good features. They did the thing where they like, here's some crazy creator features the two of you are going to use, but you make a bunch of you want to buy it thinking you will use it someday and you never will.
All right, let's move into gaming. Scott, I'm glad you're here today because we've got a new survey talking a little bit about what's going on in the gaming industry these days. What are some takeaways?
Well, all right. So this is a GDC survey. This is the Game Developers Conference. Happens every year in San Francisco. Going on now, I think, right? This week. Or is it next week? I think it's next week.
Yeah.
Anyway, GDC, big deal. They have one of the things they're known for is this is the place where you get to hype it all up to the developers themselves. Think of it as a developers conference, except maybe even more hypey because it's just like, here are the new tools, here are the amazing new technologies. You get speeches and talks from people that are like luminaries in the industry as well as, breakout stars in the indie space. It's a really cool convention that happens every year. In a lot of ways, it's the other half of E3. The other, of course, going probably to the Game Awards in terms of coverage. So it's an important event. They released this State of Gaming survey in 2025, and here's some of the stuff we heard. It was a lot of stuff about layoffs and AI, to be honest, a lot. Bunch of other data in there, but not surprising, two of the biggest issues in the gaming space right now: layoffs and workers, and how that sort of flow goes, and then AI, how much of it are we using, how much are we not, and that sort of thing. So some of the broad trends show a lot of anxiety toward jobs in the industry and efforts to make that better. That is not a surprise at all to anybody who's been paying attention to the business. And they also talk about an uptick in generative AI and the industry's either embrace or rejection of such things. And it turns out we swung pretty hard with the hype bat last year, and they're pulling back a little bit this year. At least that's what these percentages say. So while AI use is on the rise on the whole in industry development, it is seeing more skepticism, more negative sentiment its direction by both inside and outside the business. I think that's we've all been sensing that on the outside as far as people who cover it, so this makes sense. Some of the stuff that surprised me a little bit, though, and I don't know why it should have because it makes sense to me, but the PC platform, is growing in popularity with 80% of developers having it as the platform they actively develop on. Now, before you go, well, that's crazy. What happened to PCs? It actually makes a lot of sense because both Xbox and PlayStation, this generation and last generation, for that matter, were x86 architecture devices. They were very easy to develop for compared to previous devices. And now if you are going to create your game on a PC as the flagship development platform, having to port that to these other devices is not a huge deal. Like, it's actually, that pipeline's easier than it's ever been. Gone are the days of the PlayStation 3 and their weird, wacky chip that was hard to develop for no matter who you were. Porting was a nightmare. Now porting's easy. So what
you're saying is you develop on the PC because then it makes it easy to turn those into all the other platforms.
Yeah, the wheels are greased in those other directions because those devices are already those things. Now there's optimization. There's a lot of stuff involved.
It's harder to go the other way to develop specifically for the PlayStation and then turn it into PC than it is the other way.
Yeah.
And I mean, I will add, at least in the past 6 to 7 years, you would have seen a lot of before just sort of console exclusive Japanese developers open up to the idea of developing a port of their titles on PC, and Steam being one of the big avenues which they could sell them. So it helps that the x86 architecture is the same. It also helps that a lot of the development tools are on PC, so you're already working on it.
Yeah.
It's like leaving money on the table. If you develop, well, I'm just going to only make it for the PS5 and Xbox, and everyone else can go pound sand. It's like, well, now you're missing like 40 to 50% of potential revenue. I mean,
yeah, you also don't want to skim too quickly over the idea. You mentioned it, but Steam is a juggernaut now. It is a massive source of revenue for small devs up to big AAA type companies, and not developing there is a liability. You really do want to have your games on PC, and those who aren't are getting a little bit hit by that, especially in Japan. There are a lot of Japanese developers that are slow to port their products to the PC or even start there. And usually it's based on just sort of a long-standing tradition of we're console game makers or whatever. So despite the ease of which it is to do it now, like we've been talking about, those wheels are greased. You may as well take advantage of it. They are slower to do it. So we're seeing a move over there. It's gradual. We're seeing them change that a little bit. But over here and in Western markets, we are seeing a massive shift from, oh yeah, the PC will probably get a version, or we're not really developing PC first or whatever. It's now kind of dominating, and certainly dominating the development part of it. And to give you a perspective here, PlayStation 5 followed that 80% with 38%, Xbox Series X and S at 34%, and Switch at 20%. Ironically, in the Xbox Series X and S department, especially when it comes to Microsoft first-party games, they're already being developed as PC games to start with, no matter what, because they're launching day and date on Game Pass on PC as well as console. There's some disparity there. For the most part, it's day and date on all of those. Switch getting 20% shouldn't make anybody worry or think that that's bad news for the Switch 2. This is how it always is. You're not talking about first-party development here, which is where Nintendo owns it, right? This is how they thrive. First-party, their device, games unlike any others. No one makes Mario and Zelda and these games that they make, Metroid, whatever. So that number really doesn't matter. If anything, it helps illustrate just how odd Nintendo is in this business and how they continue to just have sort of a weird rarefied space. Just to break down just a couple of more little details here. 11% of the developers in this survey reported that new layoffs happened in, around their business, or to them directly in the past year. That being 2024. Previous year was 7%. So that's an increase. Not a massive increase, but an increase nonetheless. And that was also a bad year by most accounts. Overall, though, 41% of developers. So we're pushing half there. Close. 10% away from it. 9. Of developers reported an impact of layoffs up to 35% from the previous year. So that's a lot of colleagues getting let go. That's a lot of people having their jobs directly affected. That's a lot of shifting around of departments and companies. Even if you're not let go, these layoffs cause displacement within the companies. So a lot of that stuff happening. And then they gave us percentage reasons why companies are, what their reasons are for the layoffs. This is interesting to me. 22% said restructuring, 18% declining revenue, and 15% said market shifts and industry trends. None of those you hear about when they actually announce the layoffs, by the way. It's usually just, either they'll bring up the pandemic era, that kind of 4 or 5 year era, as, well, we got too big, now we got to pull back, and to maintain profitability, we have to do this and that. No one ever says restructuring out loud. But internally, apparently, this is that is restructuring. When
that's a long way of saying restructuring. When they say we hired too many people and started too many projects, and now we need to weed them all back, right?
Yeah.
But it's also acquisitions. When you get merged, I don't know, when like say a Microsoft buys an Activision Blizzard, you've got to restructure, right? It makes sense that you're going to have some efficiencies there, that you're going to have to change the way Activision Blizzard worked because now it's plugged into the wider Microsoft environment, and it would be inefficient not to restructure it.
That's a good point. There are going to be redundancies across the board, especially when you merge companies that already have a lot of the same departments and that sort of thing. So some of that is to be expected. The interesting bit to me is also this 15% market shifts in industry trends. What that doesn't say, it's a much simpler number on the face of it, but what it doesn't really get into is part of the reason for those shifts is the games are taking longer to make. So when especially big AAA companies are trying to make the next greatest photorealistic, beautiful game, cross-platform, sell millions and millions of these games. Those games in the early days took 4 years. Now they take 6, and then they take 7, and now they're taking up to a decade. So what you announced 10 years ago and what you deliver in 9 or 10 years, the entire market has shifted maybe multiple times to either favor what you've been working on for 10 years or you deciding to scrap it or change it completely because things have changed so much and player expectations have changed or business models have changed. You may start a project when loot boxes are popular and so you integrate the heck out of your game with loot boxes as your monetization method, and then 5-6 years into it, everyone hates them. Multiple major governments around the world are banning them, and you're left with a bunch of game that you're going to have to scrap a ton of it and go, well, we have to rethink this. This is happening more and more and more, and that's a big problem right now. They don't really get into that nitty gritty in the survey, but I think that's some of the hidden reasons behind some of these numbers. Then they get into the generative AI stuff. This is interesting too. 50% of developers use generative AI in game development. Now, keep in mind, this could mean art, it could mean code, it could mean animation, it could mean all those things. 52%, that's a fairly high number. 36% of developers say they use them personally, a 31% increase from last year, which is a sizable jump. Interestingly, though, 27% say their company has of no interest in generative AI. And there is a big push right now, especially the smaller to mid-sized companies, to pull back a little bit and go, oh, okay, everybody calm down for a minute. Sentiment against this stuff is pretty bad. People don't want it. Our customers are saying this. And so we are not going to use it. And there's more and more of that happening. So how it breaks down within each company is also interesting. 51% of those in business and finance use it. So that's, really quite separate from the dev teams. 41% production and team leadership use it. Again, it's sort of connected to the actual game development, but community and marketing make up the other 39%, or 39% of them. They don't make up that. There's no remaining, but a lot of them do as well. And then this thing really shows some of the concern that's happening. They were last year when polled about the same question. 13% of developers were positive last year, at 21% positive about AI and tools and being used in their business. This year, 13. So it's actually down. So I think that's the swing back I was talking about. It's not a huge swing back, but it's a swing back nonetheless. 30% of developers were negative about AI's impact on the industry, up from 18% last year. So it's a little concerning. And most of the concerns are things like IP theft, quality of the results, energy use, potential biases, regulatory issues, which is a whole other aspect of this.
So I have a theory about this, Scott.
Yep.
I think there's two things at work here. So if you look at the business and finance developers, a lot of the large language models are really good at very specific things. They're good at a lot of kinds of coding. They're good at a lot of kinds of like automated number crunching. They are not good at more creative stuff. And there are other effects that will change this, which is people learning, oh, I thought I could use this to make my job better. I tried it for a while. It doesn't, right? So that's a change of opinion.
Right.
There are people reading the news, actually not the news, reading the social media posts of other people telling them how bad AI is and going, wow, I guess it's really bad. I have a negative opinion about it. That affects it. And then you have bosses coming in and saying, AI, I hear it's the thing, use it. And employees going, for what? Like, it doesn't actually help me in my job. And now they have a negative opinion about it. So I think there's a lot of various factors that are causing, as we start to realize what these tools are good for, a narrowing of people who are like, oh yeah, they're really good for me. And then a lot of other external stuff that affects opinions about them too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's 100% correct. I want to say one last thing, because we were talking earlier about AR and VR and stuff. Interesting breakdown on that. If you're wondering who's leading that market, you might get some of those bits of information. This isn't really direct connections, but it says a lot, I think. A bunch of developers, 35% in fact, of those surveyed, so they're working on AR, VR development. Of those 63% of them are developing for the Meta Quest or the Horizon Store. That's a massive majority in Meta's favor. 45% developing for Steam VR. A lot of that is they kind of coexist. Those are very cross. And then we go down to the dregs a little bit. 26% for Apple Vision OS and 25%, just a percentage point between them and PlayStation VR and VR2. So I just thought that was interesting little way of seeing maybe how that market's doing overall, you know?
That's more than I would have expected working in development, 35%.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. Well, some of you are thinking, I want to discuss this more. Others of you are thinking, I want to talk about the difference between prawns and shrimp. Well, I can give you an answer to both of those. Our Discord. If you're a patron, you can sign up, link your account to Discord. They're talking about the difference between prawns and shrimp in there right now, but you could also be talking about these numbers and discussing them with people as well. So join the conversation. Link your Discord account to your Patreon account at patreon.com/DTNS.
Nice.
After right around the end of the show yesterday, we were talking about Netflix seeking to raise their prices again. A lot of people mumble and grumble about that, but Netflix also very popular. Roger, let's talk about the official details on these price increases and who it affects.
All right. So during its latest earning reports, which was yesterday, Tuesday, Netflix announced that it will be, quote, adjusting prices today across most plans in the U.S., Canada, Portugal, and Argentina. Illustrated on Netflix plans page, the ad-supported tier will increase from $6.99 to $7.99 a month. The standard tier without the ads increases from $15.49 to $17.99 a month, and the premium tier will see a bump from $22.99 to $24.99 a month. Now, according to The Verge, the company's spokesperson, Momo Zhao, said the new pricing goes into effect during the subscriber's next billing cycle. Now, the company also mentioned it was rolling out a new extra member with ads plan, so subscribers can add an ad-supported membership to their plan for someone outside of their household for an additional $6.99 a month. Now, this is separate from adding an extra member for an ad-free plan, which has been raised from $7.99 to $8.99 a month.
So basically, they're all going up between $1 and $2.
Yeah.
Per month, which is it's going to make a lot of people not
And
not
it's the
thrilled.
first price rise since 2023, I think, right? Didn't we figure that out? Wow, Scott was shocked by the fact that it's been that long.
Scott, are you
Ridiculous.
gonna be okay?
Apparently, this news was.
Scott's
was-
like, I'm gonna throw a plate. That's what I'm gonna do.
It was news to my Frog Pants branded tumbler, and it decided to take a dive.
I think that's a common reaction to price
Sure.
rises.
Now, it's interesting. In a letter to investors, Netflix explained the price increase as, quote, a way to, as we continue to invest in programming and deliver more value for our members, we occasionally ask our members to pay a little more so that we can reinvest to further improve Netflix. I'm wondering if this has something to do with the fact that they're now scoping out live sports as part of their.
Yes. I don't. People get weird about this stuff, and I agree that when they raise the price, I don't like it either. But companies raise prices, especially for services, because there's demand for it. And they aren't just like immediately sending the price rise to Johnny McMoney buckets somewhere so that he can buy a new wing to his mansion. They do reinvest the money. They use the money to expand the product. That's how you got Netflix originals. That's how you get live NFL sports. That's how you get freaking Beyonce to agree to do a halftime show that's streamed on Netflix. So yeah, they're like, we raised 19 million new subscribers last quarter. Because we did the NFL, because we did Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, because we have Squid Game, how do we get money to do more of those things and add more subscribers? Well, one of the ways is to raise the price. And if you're continuing to add subscribers at that rate, it implies that they aren't as price sensitive as they used to be. Also, they're only raising it in 4 markets. They've been doing this slowly over time. 4 or 5 markets at a time saying, okay, we'll raise the price there, we'll raise the price here. It's just that this one happens to be in the US, so it's getting more press.
And I think it's important to note that, I mean, this isn't Netflix programming has increased. It hasn't stayed stale. It isn't the same stuff that it was even a year ago. And so I think for users, as long as they see the stuff they want or new and interesting stuff come in that keeps them on it, I mean, I would be one of those people not to easily dismiss a price hike, but most people could stomach an extra $1 or $2,
or they'll cancel. And if they raise it too high and too many people cancel, they'll realize they raised it too high, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we had this going in our subreddit where people are like, that's it, I haven't used Netflix in a long time, I'm quitting Netflix. And somebody in our subreddit wrote, apparently some of you are lying because they keep getting more subscribers, not fewer.
My wife watches it. I wouldn't say exclusively, but she watches a lot of the British Bake Off, like the one they brought over to Netflix, because she just loves the show. And I keep it around just for that, because as long as she keeps her happy,
Nainu says
makes me
they need to split out the live as a tier. I don't need or want to support Netflix developing it. Live isn't the only thing that they are investing their money in. They're investing their money in other dramatic shows, into movies, into games.
But that's an interesting idea, though.
Yeah. You may reasonably say, well, I don't like all of those things. But Netflix doesn't want to make it too complicated. If you have a live tier, then suddenly everyone's going to be like, oh, it's like cable where I have to pay extra for the premium tier. I think if you don't like what Netflix is offering you for the price they're offering you, then cancel it. Don't worry about whether you're paying for a live tier you don't use. Is what you use it for worth the money you're paying for it? Then keep it. Is what you're using it for not worth the money you're paying for? Then cancel it. You're reasonable to do so.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the market will. I hate the phrase "the market will just let the market decide." I understand that it gets annoying to hear it all the time, but it's just true in this case. Like either people are going to pay it or they're not, and most people probably will. And if they start to see that edges out, well, then they'll stop raising it for a while, and then they'll probably do it again. I mean, I get annoyed. I see it and go, wait, didn't they just do this? Because it feels like they do it all the time. And I know it's been a while. But
Well,
so
because
many services
you
are
hear about
doing
the
it.
price rise in every market they do it, and then what Roger just said. There's also all the other services raising their prices, and so you feel like somebody's raising a price every day.
Yeah. And I
Like
think
layovers.
that there's something to be said for if Netflix raises their prices, others will do it more freely because I think
Because they're the
that's
market
room for
leader.
them to bump up their tier, even
Maybe,
though they may
but-
be half of this amount.
But Netflix has the advantage of a lot of viewers and having the market heft.
Yeah,
to
that's
get
what I
away
mean.
with
They-
it.
they can get away with it.
If you're a
Yeah.
smaller player and you want to catch up, do you want to try to price yourself out? Where if you had two services and they're roughly the same, who are you going to go with, Netflix or Joe's local content streaming service?
Emporium.
Yeah,
I wish there was a streaming service called Joe's Local Content. That would
I'd
be
use
amazing.
it. Yeah, I'd use it.
I mean,
That'd be great.
I like local news. I remember back in, gosh, I don't know what it was, 2011 maybe. My roommate and me at the time, we were both sort of like, why are we splitting this cable bill? This is before we had all the options that we have now. You could buy like a series on iTunes kind of thing, and there were other options, but it kind of meant like if you cut the cord, you're really cutting it, and then you want something very specific. That's kind of how it started with me, where we were like, all right, let's do it. And sure, it was like, we're freed of this payment that we don't have to make anymore, and we can slowly try to add some things back that we really, really, I want to watch Mad Men type thing. I remember that was something that I paid for the season. I'm like, I have to watch Mad Men every week kind of thing. And now we're in the situation where we have all these different ways that we can get all of the things that you can get on cable in a variety of different ways. And we talk about this all the time. It's like, if you sign up for all of these services, then you're going to pay more than you would for that previous cable subscription anyway. So pick and choose. What do you really want? What was the reason that you didn't want cable in the first place? Because that's more or less what you're recreating. I think Netflix is, I know a lot of people who are like, I mean, maybe I have an OTA antenna for some like network stuff, but Netflix is all I really need. A lot of people feel that way. I don't feel like Netflix is giving me everything that I need, but as the prices go up, so do the offerings. So I don't think the company is doing anything wrong here. And yeah, you're right, Roger. The prices go up because you're getting things like sports and live offerings that you didn't have before.
I mean, granted these 19 million new subscribers weren't in the U.S., but I mean, they're doing something right in order to grow their share.
If they raise the price too high, someone will undercut them. That's the nice thing, is that it's not cable where you didn't have another option. You're like, well, it's cable or nothing. Disney Plus, Peacock, Paramount Plus, they can all come in and go like, we're cheaper than Netflix and just as good. So there is pressure to make sure that they won't raise it so much that you feel like you have to pay because it's your only choice. You've got lots of other choices. I understand there's a bunch of people in the chat who are like, no, but I don't like that I'm paying more because they want to do live things that I don't want. Even if it's not live, let's forget whether it's live. They're like, I don't want to be paying more for them to make programming I don't watch. And I get the logic in that, because you're like, maybe I can get it cheaper if I only pay for what I watch. The fact is that's just too complex, because there's way more on Netflix that you don't watch than you realize, because you never see it. And if they were to try to tailor it to you, it would be ridiculous. The thing with Netflix is there stuff you want to watch on it? Here's how much it costs a month to watch it. You can choose to cancel at any time, and you aren't going to get it cheaper by making it more complex for them to manage your subscriptions. I just want you to understand that. Like, I get the logic from the customer side, but it's not going to make any sense from the business side. And as a customer, then you just have to ignore the stuff that you're not paying for, because you're not watching most of what's on Netflix. You're not watching 98% of what's on Netflix. But the idea is that they have it all available because all of it is appealing to somebody out there. And it's that scale that allows them to offer a worldwide catalog of this much stuff that's only $25 a month, compared to cable, which isn't even on demand, doesn't have this much of a footprint, doesn't have this much content, and is considerably more expensive. So yeah, I don't like the price rise either, but I still think it's worth the value, at least for me.
Well, while we're talking about the current age of video and how we all watch it, Apple TV Plus, we'll call it a darling show, Severance, returned for season 2 last Friday. Highly anticipated and also quite delayed. There was, writer's strike and lots of stuff that happened between season 1 and season 2, so it's been a while. Research from Merritt Analytics says that this generated more than $200 million. This is just, the beginning of season 2. Now, these are not official Apple numbers. Apple didn't actually comment on this, but Merritt says it uses its own content valuation methodology, correlating audience demand with subscribers to eventually figure out a rough revenue number. If these numbers are to be believed, then Severance doing pretty well. If you compare it to other hits like Slow Horses, The Morning Show, both pretty popular Apple TV Plus shows. Slow Horses generated $184.8 million during a similar time frame to Severance season 1. So you're looking at that first season there. And The Morning Show made $299.4 million, but that was across a longer period of time. You got 3 seasons there. Now, Ted Lasso, which is arguably the most beloved of the Apple TV Plus shows, where certainly had the most viewers and had a lot of good press, definitely ran away with it. Also teasing a 4th season, so might not be over. But that, in the same period, using the same methodology, generated just over $600 million.
I'm very curious to know more about this methodology, but it is the kind of thing that these companies do to understand in a subscription service which shows are worth making or which aren't. And I believe that Severance, as popular as it is and as much buzz as it has, would be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah. It's also just it's just a reminder that I don't think Apple has ever intended to, well, I shouldn't say this. Of course, they'd love to be in first place in content creation, right? Why would you get into this if you didn't have plans for that? Yeah. But they definitely have had a bent toward, we're not going to make anything that's like objectively crappy. Like there's no shovelware in their catalog. There really isn't. It's really good stuff. Kind of across the board.
There's no Singles Inferno on Apple TV Plus.
I mean, some of it is, subjectively, you might not like it or like it, but yeah, you would call all of this high production value stuff.
Yeah, it's like if you're a fan of British spy movie or television shows, then you're probably going to really like Slow Horses. But if you don't like that kind of thing, well, you're probably not going to watch it in the first place.
Yeah, right.
But they don't make stuff that's just bad or gets terrible ratings or whatever. And they also just happen to make, in my case, 2 of my favorite shows in recent memory, which is Severance and Silo. Mm-hmm. And those 2 alone, I also loved C. I know a lot of people were kind of iffy on C. I thought C was awesome for similar reasons. But their genre fiction stuff that they've done, science fiction, fantasy, and otherwise, I think has been like top tier. And in these 2 cases, they're the kind of shows that I feel like if that's all they gave me, I would pay for these because they're worth it. I don't know what that future is for them, though, because obviously they want to be a company that makes money at everything they do. And while they may have deep pockets that can just chuck money at projects like this, that's not going to go on forever. So I would really like the more mainstream, grappling on of Apple TV products because I love that stuff and I don't want to see it go away. And fighting somebody as big as Netflix or even Disney or anybody else, this is going to be a long haul for them. They have the money to do the long haul. The question is, will they do it?
They're in the position that Amazon is in, right? Where they're making their money off another platform, but using video to spur people to buy a subscription to that platform, right? In Amazon's case, it's shipping and retail. Apple's case, it's services for cloud computing and phones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah,
we also hear a lot about how Apple TV Plus has so many fewer subscribers than a Netflix, for example, or a Disney Plus, or Crunchyroll for that matter. But I don't, and there's also we've talked on the show over the last 6 months rumblings of Apple reining back on production budgets for shows. So I think if Apple is doing what I think it's doing is that they want the folks who think Severance is a great show to love that show, and let's double down on shows like that and throw a little bit less spaghetti at the wall on shows that might be lower budget and not so Apple, something that somebody would equate with an Apple production project.
Yeah, they definitely want to use these shows as sort of to cultivate kind of an image of the brand. And it's interesting, like whether or not they have more or less viewers competing services. I mean, you would have to look at the entire business within Apple as an aggregate to kind of conclusively say whether it's a good or bad thing, because there's some places.
Is it driving Apple One subscribers in their pivot to services? That's the metric.
Right. That's it, isn't it? That's all it is. And their desire to not put, like, I just want to make this clear. Like, this is an Apple thing across the board. They don't want to, you can love Apple or hate Apple, but they don't like the idea that anybody looks at something they've made and says, well, that is clearly a piece of garbage, whether it's content or a piece of hardware or a phone or anything. They don't want anyone to say that. Yeah. You may be competitive with them and say, well, this thing's got more features than they do and the price is better. You can do all that all day. But I don't think that they ever let go of that part of it. And as a result, I think this always stays a little cottage for them, but contributes to that bottom line of, does it drive our services? And I think it probably does, but they're going to make adjustments, and they're probably going to be a little more choosy. And it can't just be A24 kind of films all the time that, are great movies and maybe even win Oscars, but doesn't have mass market appeal. They're going to have to fight that battle all the time. But I think this stuff sticks around. I may be just optimistic because
they're getting a little bit of the HBO vibe, right? Where you go, used to be like, I'd go from Entourage to Game of Thrones to, True Detective. Like there'd always be a hot HBO show. Silo to Severance felt a little like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think if anything, HBO, I wouldn't say HBO's lost their edge, but they've had less of that. Penguin was amazing. Bit of a dip with Prophecy. I still like it, but they don't have these they haven't had as much like repetitive bam kind of stuff.
I'm looking forward to White Lotus, but I'm not watching anything on HBO right this second. So.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing the show.
Yeah, right this second.
right this second, Tom. I've been watching Slow Horses this entire time.
Yeah, actually, you're right. Yeah. Me too.
All right, let's check out the mailbag. Allison Sheridan wrote in and said, when I heard the statistic on DTNS Live that the average adult spends 58 minutes a day on TikTok, I started wondering whether the lost productivity might actually be more than the revenue gained by creators.
That's funny. Yeah. The productivity gains of people not being able to spend 58 minutes on TikTok outweighed the loss of revenue.
I think so this was it last Friday? Wasn't this a Friday quiz question? Of how long, how many hours
minutes,
per day,
yeah,
or how many
right.
minutes per day, And I was like way under. I think I said something like 15 because I'm like, that's about as much as I give myself.
I think I said something ridiculously long, like 6 hours or something.
I mean, somebody is watching TikTok for 6 hours a day. That's
probably
definitely
not the
a thing.
So,
but you've got some free time if that's the case.
And then Wicked Kitten 13 wrote, while you were talking about Tom's time at Pizza Hut, Nika chimed in about Book It. Just as I was shouting this at my podcatcher, I read so many books during those years. We would have to read the book and do a book report on it before my teacher would give us the certificate. Then I would have my dad drive me there just to pick up my tiny, well-earned pizza. I'd like to join the Pizza Hut Club with Nika and Tom. Thank you. Monica/Wicked Kitten 13.
Oh, that's so fun. I wish we had that. Maybe my school had that and I didn't know anything about it.
I think it came after us. Because there was Tim Jar was saying on our Patreon, like, we had it in the Midwest. We had it in Illinois, Tom. And I was like, yeah, we didn't have it at my school. So either my school just didn't participate or it came later. I should check with my brother.
It must have been a younger set because I would have totally been all over a personal sized pizza. Read books, ridiculous. I'll eat pizza all the time.
Yeah. I hate to agree with Roger, but I do.
I don't remember what company was associated with the school, but I'm sure this happened all over the place. But they would encourage you to sell like magazine subscriptions.
Oh yeah, the
And then you would,
fundraisers.
and if you got, if you sold enough of them, you would get like pencils that have like the little trolls, on the
Yep.
top, kind of thing.
We
Like,
did
and I
that
remember
too.
my mom saying, "That's not a good enough reward. Like, I don't want you."
I
doing
remember
this."
my mom saying, "It's like, why are they making kids go out door to door to hawk magazine subscriptions?"
They'd always have something on there too, like a mini Pac-Man machine. If you sell 1,500 subscriptions, I'm like, what kid is selling 1,500
Yeah.
subscriptions? to
Right.
magazines?
Yeah.
And you just sell them to your parents or your aunt and uncle
Yeah,
or
yeah.
their coworkers.
Yeah, and you got like a couple troll pencils,
Yeah. We had there
which
was
admittedly were very cool at one point.
Pizza Hut was doing something in our school, but I could not tell you what it was, and I don't think it was personal pizzas. I think it was just somehow if you did something or got points or something, you get a big old coupon to go to Pizza Hut and get a deal or a free pizza or something. And that's all I
Pretty
remember.
close, except for the reading part. Yeah.
Yeah, I
so-
don't think it was reading. It was more like some school demerit, not demerit. Not to take your name in vain, Tom, but
Me?
like, what's the opposite of demerit? Merits, I guess.
Merit, yeah,
So you
merit
got
points.
points for good behavior, and you
I get those
cleaned
naturally.
up, and yeah, you're always getting those demerits. But yeah, there was something like that going on, but it didn't feel very organized, and none of us knew what was happening. So, and I never won
mean-
it. So
We ended up just selling candy bars.
nice. We did that
for all
too.
of it.
Yeah.
I ate a lot of my candy
We had
bars.
bake sales, a lot of bake sales.
We had some bake sales. Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember those.
Yeah.
Yeah, good times.
My mom was she was good at that stuff. A lot of
baking or
brownies
the
coming
sales?
out of the Lane
Oh, yeah.
residence for the bake sale. So we would like
Oh,
I don't
we
know,
had to
like,
sell
buy a
boxes of
computer
candies for band. Like
Yes.
you like mints and turtles, chocolate,
Yeah,
the
chocolate
chocolate covered
turtles.
nuts that they
yeah.
in the shape
We
of a
sold the
turtle.
king-sized pack of either Reese's or was it Snickers or Twix? One of those.
Hold on,
But
what
like
Tom? What'd you do in the band?
I was
Suddenly
in
I'm-
drums,
No way! I didn't
Yeah.
know this. That's
percussion.
great.
Yeah,
Look at Tom back
I
there.
played
in
the
drums.
quads in marching band.
Quads.
Oh, there's always something with Tom. He probably has his drum set behind him in that bookcase somewhere.
Right here.
But if any of
I've
this,
been wearing
if
it
you're
this whole time.
if you're like, I was also in band, or I also sold magazine subscriptions, or there was something else at my school, let us know, or let us know about anything that strikes your fancy. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com is our email address. All right, Scott Johnson, you've done well, and for that, we will let you buy a magazine subscription. But when you're
darn,
not
What would you
doing
like?
that,
Ladies' Home Journal.
that's
Can
right,
I?
Scott.
Is Personal Pan Pizza a magazine? Because yes, I'll take that.
You could shove it into a magazine and then
That's
look
a good
at
point.
it.
I probably could. Instead, I will tell you that this is kind of a big week for the gaming business. I have a show called Core where I talk about video games every week with a couple of co-hosts, and me, Bo, and John are going to cover tomorrow's Xbox Microsoft event. Where they show off all their new stuff for the year. It's going to be kind of a big deal. At least this is going to be Microsoft's big first deal of the year where they show off a lot of stuff, possibly hints at a succeeding console line, although those rumors are fairly unfounded, and I doubt we're going to hear it. But a lot of people think we might. And maybe what's coming to Game Pass sooner than you think. It's going to be a big month for them, too. They got multiple titles coming out next month, or in February, that are huge and kind of important for the rest of their year. So come join us for that live episode, and then we're going to do a whole other episode on Friday where we do like the normal stuff we always do. So double dose of Core this week, all for the price of one, happening at frogpants.com/core or wherever you get your shows.
Excellent. All right, Tom. We have been getting title submissions throughout the show. What are some that we've flagged as pretty cool?
Yeah, go to dtns.showbot.tv and vote. Batfink 2001 leading the votes right now with Netflix and Bill. Get it? Because they charge you. We also got Johnny McMoney Buckets once more for your Netflix from Clinton Woodward. Zoe suggested Joe's local content. Nick with a C read my mind because this is what I thought when we did this quick hit. I like to move it. When we talked about the Move It app earlier. And then, Larry and Alana, I wish I had named the briefing this. What Samsung didn't unpack at Samsung Unpacked, because it seems like it was less packed.
That's
than
really
not.
good.
Also, Clinton with Bixby not dead yet. Sarah, what'd we go with?
We went with, drum roll please, NetFlex from Batfink 2001.
Nice. Fantastic.
Get it?
I love
Get
it.
it? Yeah, flexing the wallet.
I'm going to charge you more, and you're going to like it.
That's right.
Yep.
That is right.
Nice.
I made a little magazine cover for you, Scott. Personal Pan Pizza magazine. There it
That's
is.
cool. The pan is
What?
That's nice.
It
I
says
love
the
it.
priest you'll love. You'll love pizza. Rural love.
You'll
How to
love-
make crip crust.
You know what? The
How
only
to make the priggest you'll love.
10
look-
perfect toppings.
I don't even. It's I. You know, I usually like recoil at AI imagery,
Crust.
crib crust. But I love that. That looks so good. I could eat it. I could eat that right.
That
now.
sounds like that's like someone made pizza crust out of Formica.
Yeah, the pizza itself is not too bad. And they got the title Personal Pan Pizza magazine.
Yeah,
Perfect.
that's
Yeah.
pretty. And
The
magazine.
pizza itself, what do we got? We got basil, pepperoni,
Yeah.
maybe some like grape
Tomatoes
tomatoes, something like that.
Yeah.
I'm down.
I
some
think
da-
those tomatoes
Gold.
those tomatoes and those pepperonis are questionable. I
and
don't-
they
Some of them
and the
might
pizza,
be sort of like
Prophylactics?
rings, some
Well,
like candy
well,
rings.
What's interesting is the pizza is not cut equally. Like if you look at it, it's just the lines are like the way a real person
Oh.
would slice a pizza.
yeah,
Actually,
the longer
yeah,
you look, the worse it
kind of
gets.
looks the way I sliced a pizza
Yeah.
when I was a kid.
It's like all
You know, I
AI. The
didn't know.
longer you look, the more problems you find. It's really rough.
There you go.
The prefist.
Yeah, I always used to get in trouble at home, whether it was pizza. Well, it wasn't really pizza because pizza, we would order it and somebody would have cut it already. But like a pie, another round thing. I would like cut my slice. My mom would go, "Well, now it's uneven. The whole thing's ruined."
Can't have that.
Yeah.
You're supposed to, you'd have to treat it like a round thing. Yeah, it never really happened because I wanted my pizza or my pie.
Well, we got to get out of here. But before we do, big thanks to everybody who supports us at Patreon, patreon.com/DTNS. Big thanks to everybody watching us on LinkedIn and YouTube and Twitch. In fact, we get bits from people on Twitch. Technomensch, Zoe, and SW Texas all gave us bits. Technomensch resubscribed for the 22nd month. Thanks, everybody, for supporting us in all the different ways you can.
Indeed. By the way, have you heard about this show called Apple Vision Show that I host every week with my co-host Eileen Rivera? If not, it's really fun. We just recorded our most recent episode yesterday, which you can get, episode 45. We're up to 45 episodes. We talk about all things Apple, news from Apple, what we want to see from Apple. We look at the latest builds from Apple, what we like, what we don't like. There's a lot of AI talk these days, obviously, but we would love to have you along for the ride. Subscribe now at applevisionshow.com. We're back tomorrow live, as we always are on Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern. That is 2100 UTC. Find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. Thanks for being with us, and we will see you tomorrow.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.